opposite sense, like you make love for 5 minutes, you experience it like 10 years. You know, why automatically the imagination did go in this direction? The problem here is, again, it's not that there are no changes imaginable. No, the problem is that there are changes, but uncontrollable. I think the world is radically changing. The problem is in what direction. For example, as to positive potentials. Someone with whom I don't wholly agree politically, but he's sometimes interesting, the British social thinker, Jeremiah Rifkin. He, in a recent book called The Zero Marginal Cost Society, he developed in a quite convincing way how, due to recent progress of internet and so on, how a new sphere is emerging which simply no longer functions at the level of market, like free circulation of data, even of some commodities and so on. And I really think that no wonder that the so-called problem of so-called intellectual property is such a problem today. Frankly, I don't think capitalist society will be able to resolve this problem. Because, to put it in, I'm consciously here, provocatively very naive, that intellectual property is something which cannot be inscribed into ultimately into the level of private property. Like, it's an explosive dimension. It is almost, I would say, in its nature, communist. It has to function normally, if I may use this term, it has to circulate freely. So, okay, we have all these potentials of internet, but at the same time, as we learn from Snowden and others, of course, WikiLeaks, at the same time, this same phenomenon, internet, engenders new unthinkable forms of control, which are, I think, much more dangerous than old types of controlling people. But you know why? Because in these new forms of control, you still retain your sense of freedom. So when I got WikiLeaks revelations, I totally agree with those who claim, but why focus on the United States? Isn't China or Russia much worse? My answer is yes, but in China and Russia, especially in China, you at least know directly that you are controlled. No one has even the illusion of freedom. While the problem in the United States is that they are controlled, but while still retaining the self-experience that they are free. And a vulgar metaphor came to me, vulgar, rough. You know, I read somewhere, this always fascinates me, this new biogenetic or technological brain sciences inventions, that they already succeeded in connecting brains to computers in such a way that at least it works with rats. My friend, a neurobiologist, sent me videos which show this. It's pretty horrifying. Like, you have a rat freely jumping around. Then you click, connect it to a machine, and you can play with a living rat, like with a remote-controlled car. You don't know? And of course, privately, they are afraid to come with this out into public. Privately, they told me, of course, the whole point is to apply this to humans. And I immediately asked them the question which they admitted is the right question. The enigma is this one. Let's say, I do this to you, and you wander around, I control you. The problem is, how will you experience it? Will you experience it, oh my God, I am no longer myself? Or will you simply think that you are still free? They told me, unfortunately, it's the second option. Isn't this horrible? Like, you know, you are controlled, you even don't know. Another dimension of this new means of control. Did you hear about so-called high-frequency traders. There was recently some Flash Boys, a best-selling book which elaborated it. It's so interesting. The idea is that you know how billions are earned. They established an extremely fast optic cable connections between Chicago and New York stock markets. It's just a tiny, like instead of 17 milliseconds, it's 13 milliseconds. And what do? Let's say I'm a stockbroker. I'm in front of a screen, I see an offer, I press the button, buy, and it appears to me that immediately it's realized. What happens in that 4 milliseconds is that the computer program of those bad guys, high-frequency traders, registers my yes offer, and itself, the computer with this program, buys that commodity and sells it back to me for a slightly higher price. And I don't even get it because, again, the difference is 4 milliseconds. I think that it's instant. I press the button, I have it. Why is this so interesting? Because it literally, first it undermines the internet myth that it's an instant synchronous world community. As they like to say, it doesn't matter where you are. Well, here it matters where you are. And the interesting thing is, again, that you are cheated at a level which is simply beyond your powers of representation. It happens in some reality which is simply irrepresentable for you. And yes, now they are already building an optic cable connecting London and Frankfurt stock market with New York. So it will even go on and so on. So what I'm saying is that things are happening today, new methodologies of how to control us, which are simply literally beyond our comprehension. They work at a level that we cannot even imagine. This is why I think it is important today, whenever people talk about freedom, everyone is for freedom, of course, to specify what is freedom. What do we mean by freedom? You know, we should repeat the infamous Leninist question. Freedom, yes, but for whom? To do what? On the one hand, this is, I think, how ideology works. On the one hand, how do we experience our freedom at everyday level? It's usually the freedom of choice. You know, like, yes, I'm free, I can do whatever I want, I am gay, I am heterosexual, I do it with cats, dogs, I leave you all that. Or I go where I want, I choose my profession, blah, blah. At the same time, more and more large political, financial, economic decisions are made not only without democratic consultation, but even so that we even don't know secretly. For example, I hope you read here about so-called TISA, T-I-S-A, TISA agreements, which, I mean, it's true and it's crazy. Agreements were prepared among the leading trade nations, which will regulate in detail the conditions of financial flow and information flow. And some things are quite horrible there. For example, one of the provisions is that, let's say, a foreign company invests into your country. Let's say that then your legislation, you get some left-wing government, taxes them much higher, and then because of this, they will lose some money. According to this agreement, they can prosecute your government for depriving them of legal profits and so on and so on. But okay, whatever, I'm not even necessarily against it. Of course I am, but this is not the question. The question is that something so absolutely important is being debated, and not only were the negotiations done in freedom, but It even says in the agreement that for 5 years after it will be accepted and enforced, for 5 years it should remain secret. So all the big decisions, or how to fight a war, Iraq, whatever you want, all this is done in secret. And what does this mean? This means that, obviously, the notion of freedom, which is our spontaneous notion of freedom of free choice, is not enough. It's not enough to choose between options given to you. What's more, at least as in, I have nothing against this type of freedom. I'm not a Stalinist who think, that we should move beyond and to some total regulation. No, what I'm saying but we should also include into the notion of freedom, the freedom to influence, choose the very framework of these choices. That's the important thing. Like, in what the very coordinates of our freedom of choice. Here, ideology works. As some Italian economists and leftist thinkers, I wonder if their work is translated here. I think they're very important, like Maurizio Lazzarato, the Rise of the Indebted Man, or Franco Bifo Berardi developed. Here, ideology works in a wonderful way. The latest trick is that we are all treated as capitalists. The idea goes like this. Even if you are a moderate worker, and for example, you want your children to be educated, then you take a credit. The idea is that you have to be treated as a self-entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. You act as a small capitalist. I get a credit, and again, it's this stupid freedom. I'm free to decide. Will I spend it for my children's education, for a holiday, for, I don't know, better health insurance? So the idea is a wonderful one, that we are basically all capitalists. And it's just a matter of percentage of commas. If, like you, I hope you do, then I can exploit you, that you invest 100 million, I invest 10,000 or whatever, So you see, this basic experience of freedom is, in this sense, false and mystifying. Freedom is no longer associated with large collective decisions. And my crazy idea, I wonder if you would agree, is that this is why we were so fascinated by events in Ukraine. It wasn't just European racism, like, oh, finally the primitive Ukrainians will drop Russia and join the enlightened West. It was something deeply much more tragic. We saw there something that is unimaginable in our societies. People collectively acting and enforcing a decision. In our societies, this no longer works. So again, how to break out of this? Let me just control myself a little bit. Yes, do you allow me a little bit? Usually I make this joke here that, yes, if you apply the normal metaphysical linear notion of time, I'm close to the end. But here you should fight this metaphysical notion of time, circular notion of time and so on. So, sorry. The temptation here is anti-Eurocentrism. And I wonder if you will accept this. I'm trying to provoke you. This is my constant motive. That, all this fashion, even among some so-called post-colonial thinkers of, Europe is over, resistance from local cultures to global Western civilization, and so on and so on. I think I'm absolutely opposed to it for a whole series of reasons. First, I think it's very significant, symptomatic, that the European legacy is devalued at the very point when capitalism got global and no longer, let's put it like this, needs European values. The first thing that I always emphasize, the big historical thing, is that today, okay, Europe is losing ideologically, but I don't like how it is losing, because it is simply that Europe has triumphed in the sense of global capitalism. But the problem is that this global capitalism no longer needs to function smoothly, the European notion of equality, democracy, and so on. It functions much better with so-called Asian values. which I'm not a racist here, they have nothing necessarily to do with Asia. It simply means authoritarian capitalism.